Well, you know he was going to come on. It was just a matter of time, and the time is now. Matt Keske is with me, Director of Business Development for Broadcast and Entertainment at G&D North America. He is on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, a broadcaster doing a lot of niche sports for different networks, and somebody who has found a strong niche in the industry is the guy sitting courtside with me here. Matt, I'm thrilled to have you on. Thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it. This is quite an honor, to be honest with you. This is looking at some of the past people that have appeared on the show has been pretty remarkable, and a lot of people that I look up to and respect. So I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation as well with me.
With that said, how do you feel? And I know you're aware of the conversation platform, and a lot of your friends and colleagues have been on with me. How do you feel like this conversation is going to go?
Well, you're a very easy person to talk to is the vibe that I get from you. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think I'm just hoping to have a few laughs while we're doing it. So
What kind of laughs are we going to get when we talk about your experiences doing student radio?
uh, now see, that already gets a good laugh right there. Uh, that was a lot of fun. When I started out doing some student radio for the College of Lake County, it was a very tiny radio. There was probably maybe 10 people that were listening to it or something like that. And it was probably in two or three different rooms within the university. It wasn't exactly any sort of really broad distribution on that. And I was doing it with another guy named Mike, and so it was the M&M hour it was called, and it was just a lot of ridiculousness and playing some, various kind of classic rock type music that we wanted to listen to and play, and that was a lot of fun. And then it went into a little bit more of a structured uh, radio, going to Illinois State University for with WZND, and that one was a bit more the traditional disc jockey, putting in the PSAs and the commercials at certain times and introing records and all of that.
What
But
is
it was
your
a lot
what does your radio voice sound like?
of radio voice. You know what? I didn't really use any sort of smooth baritone like yourself or anything other than just the squeaky voice that I have now, which is probably why I didn't really go any further with it.
That is not true. But you have launched a very neat career in this industry to do that pivot from some student radio to this
Mhm.
pivot to what you're doing now. How did that all matriculate?
Well, I mean, um, it was actually kind of a happenstance to really get into the TV side of it. I mean, really, when I first went to school, I was wanting to get into record production and
Wow.
recording music and that sort of thing. I was really interested in that, and the radio portion of it was that step closer uh, to that industry. And while I was there at Illinois State, one of the instructors that the classes that I was taking, I put that down in a note card at the beginning of the year when they were asking, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're interested in. He said, see me after class. I was like, oh, great. And so when I talked to him, he actually was working for the media services for the university. And he said, hey, we've got an audio production assistant job that's open. We do a lot of non-broadcast television as well as, not only stuff for the university, but corporate videos for the nearby corporations around the university, and would you be interested? So I did that, and it went from doing that and doing some audio recording to doing audio for video and television, and being a sound man for corporate videos, and kind of realizing, this is kind of cool, and I don't have to, you know, maybe suffer as much as I would probably in terms of, getting started in the industry and going to a school in central Illinois. But I just sort of fell into it, and one thing led to another, and then doing an internship in Denver, Colorado for a small film video production company out there, and just kind of said, I think this TV thing might be for me. And after college, I got into um, started out in the rental business, doing renting out cameras and VCRs and that sort of thing, and then uh, had a lot of interaction with some of the mobile TV trucks that were out there. And when a position became available at Trio Video in Chicago, a mobile TV truck company that had been around for many years at that point, and one that I was quite familiar with because they handled all the Cubs, Sox, Bulls, and Blackhawks games for WGN and Fox and some of the other networks as well. I said, yeah, I could do that. And then that started my uh, truck, basically the mobile truck part of my career, which was about 22 years. So, and that was just some of the some of the greatest experiences was being a part of that, and it really kind of um, you know cemented my understanding and the familial relationships that I feel like are in with the sports business and sports production business.
You mentioned familial. What else was great and has been great about these 22 years when you mentioned that?
Um, well, the the truck companies that I worked for, Trio Video, as I mentioned before, which was based out of Chicago. I was hired initially as like in the operations side, and they were acquired. Started in 2000, and they were acquired in 2012 by NEP. And excuse me, at that point, I stayed with NEP for another 4 years after that. But pardon me. But during that time, it was particularly with Trio Video, and even NEP was a little bit smaller than what they are now. Um, there was always the ability to, um, being smaller companies, that you have those relationships directly with the ownership, or the engineering people. Everybody kind of, you always got that feeling that everybody was pulling together. Everybody had a goal, and everybody was working to it. It was a real collaborative feel, which kind of gave it more of that familial kind of relationship that you have with everybody.
So you feel that, and how does that play itself out now, particularly in what you're doing?
Um, well, with what I'm doing now, this is the first time in my career. I've started with G&D North America back in October of last year, and this is the first time that in my career that I've been on the manufacturing side. And G&D is a German manufacturer of uh, high performance, secure KVM systems, which KVM stands for keyboard video mouse extensions and matrix systems. And D&D is, at least in the North America side, is a very small group. Has probably in the U.S. has probably only been around since maybe about 5 or 6 years now, and but in Germany they've been around since 1985. And I had the opportunity to uh, get some additional training when I started. And earlier this year, I was fortunate enough to go over to Germany to see how the manufacturing process is done in this small little town called Siegen, Germany. And it's fantastic in that too is a bit more of a familial kind of group. There still is a couple of people that still work at this factory that, from the very beginning, since the early to mid 80s. And there's been a number of families that have that have grown up a part of it. So this relationship that the plant has with the town of Siegen is very familial as well.
What were you like at your very beginning? We talk about the younger years. And if I were watching you grow up before you got into student radio, what am I going to learn about you? What am I going to know about you?
Oh man, that's a great question. Uh, you know, Probably somebody who was uh pretty restless, somebody that enjoyed making people laugh. You know, um, I think somebody that always, you know, a bit of an empathetic soul, I guess.
Where did that come
Somebody.
from, the empathetic soul?
Um, I would say, probably my dad and my parents and my dad's side of the family too. My dad's my grandparents, just the sweetest people ever. And I think just having that loving relationship and loving family growing up. Um, you know, it was my parents were strict, but it always came from a place of love and empathy. So,
What about your strict obedience to comedy? Where did that come from?
oh, um, mm, always been a fan of comedy. I don't know why, and maybe it's just you know when you're a little kid, and I even looking back at this now, and I've always been somebody that's been interested in reading about comedians, and I listen to stand-up comedy all the time. I used to back when it was used to be on records and that sort of thing, to now listening on Sirius XM, and listening to Netflix is a joke, or the Comedy Central radio. I'm always turning on to stand-up comedy. But even like reading books, and you hear a lot of comics that talk about that moment when they're a little kid, when they get that opportunity to hear, whether it's your parents laugh, or you make a joke in class, and you make somebody laugh, and there's that feeling of like, yeah, it's exhilarating. And so I guess maybe there's a little bit of a people pleaser part of you too that comes out as well. Maybe that's what also brought me into the service industry too. Being in sales, or being in this generally has always been more of a service oriented kind of business that I've been in. Maybe that's where some of it comes from
If you didn't go into the service industry and you ended up serving others with laughter, and let's say you took off in a career doing stand-up comedy,
too.
what do you think that life would be like for you, and what you would do to get the crowd enthused and laughing?
What would I do? Oh, yeah. Um, Well, certainly I would say, in my younger, more daring days, I probably would do a whole lot to, maybe even break a few barriers that I probably shouldn't be, or inappropriateness,
Sure.
but, when you're younger and maybe not so smart. But I don't know. That's a good question. I never really thought about it. I never really thought that I would, be looking at doing a stand-up comedy thing. But I think an acting thing, or maybe even a comedic writer or something. But I guess when I think of and maybe that's why radio was a bit more intriguing too, because I think I think having to stand up there as a stand-up comedian alone on stage, and delivering jokes or doing a whole act and stuff. That's really, you know, uh, there's something very courageous about that. And because you are completely alone, it is just you and the crowd. And I'm not sure if I could do that, but I think with radio, I think there's a little bit different because there isn't they're not staring at your face as far as when you're doing it. It's a little bit more theater of the mind, so to speak, with radio versus, seeing somebody up on stage. I think that would be a lot more terrifying thinking about it now. Maybe I would have had a different idea on it if I was to get pushed in that when I was a kid, but now I find it going, wow, I don't know if I could do that.
Well, maybe you could, maybe you
Maybe.
would. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll all have to think about that. And you know,
You should never say never. I understand that and try to live by that too.
absolutely. But the idea of you talking about the courage of standing up and being a comedian goes to think, for me, what other ways in life do you feel, Matt, like you have to stand up for yourself and you feel like you have to have a certain courage and a gravitas about you to where maybe you're going off on a limb, but you believe in
Mhm.
something passionately?
Right. Yeah, I guess that's certainly true. Being something even in sales now, or giving presentations, on a product or a service, or um, giving leading a discussion in terms of anything industry related, in from that regard. I guess it's not different, except for, as a stand-up, you're looking for that constant feedback of, having a laugh every 10-15 seconds versus like, you're just hoping that in anything else, like a sales presentation or something like that people are just engaged, and maybe it's just different cues that you're going off of. So yeah, I guess it's probably not different in other kinds of things, even in the current industry and the current part of my career too, as far as that, you've got to believe in yourself and you've got to believe in what you're doing. And uh hopefully there's a positive response to what it is that you're bringing.
When it
But I
comes
think
to,
I'm
go for it.
sorry.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, but I think those are definitely important to have those, the belief in yourself and the belief in what you're doing, um, to keep that engagement going.
Which segues me into this next question. What are you doing outside of work?
Um, I'm spending as much time as possible with my family. Um, my wife and I have been together we'll be married next year. It'll be 20 years. So we just
Congrats.
at our 19th. Thank you. And we have an amazing daughter who just turned 13 as well. And it's funny because, in course, I was not even thinking about stand-up comedy before we sat down.
Yes.
You have this way, Brian, of moving things,
Sure.
that you bring things out. You're like a modern day Barbara Walters,
Thank
uh,
you.
or Oprah or whoever else you want to use. But it is interesting that my daughter, when we go out to dinner, a family dinner, usually it's kids her age and stuff. They've got their earphones on, and they're listening to music and that sort of thing. But my daughter, late, probably within the last year, when we're sitting at a dinner or something like that, and it's just kind of a casual dinner out at a restaurant, and I'll say, "Hey, what are you listening to?" And she goes, "Stand-up comedy," and
Wow.
which blows me away. I'm like, and she's truly amazing because she's really like, she's a very creative person. She's very much into dance, piano. She's taken piano lessons, dance lessons, but she's also recently got into acting. And one of the things that she did at her middle school, and this was like not anything that was ever prompted by my wife or I to say, hey, here's an idea. They have ability to create their own clubs if there's just not an existing club there at their school. He decided to create an improv club, an improv comedy club, or and I was like, "Where did you get this idea?" And she goes, "I don't know. I just thought it would be kind of cool." And when she presented it to, get a sponsor with one of the teachers, it was she had written out in 2 pages, 2 or 3 pages of this is how the club will be. This is what we're going to do. These are the types of activities. This is an examples of improv. And I think she had only been to, like a kids improv. Uh, one of her friend's parents, like does some as a hobby, does a just improv classes, and she went and saw them once. But it certainly made an impression because she even had like we'll throw out 2 ideas and then we'll have to come up with a funny bit or story or skit based off of uh, the crowd giving us, give me a place, give me a thing kind of thing. And it was just, to us, it was just so like out of left field. Like I would have never thought to do that, but what a fantastic idea. And she submitted it and she immediately got like a couple of dozen kids immediately signed up for it and just started this improv club at her middle school. And so, maybe she's going to be the one that is going to, you know, take this thing that I always thought was really kind of cool and she's actually running with it. And I don't think we've ever really had that conversation, like this is something I always wanted to do, or this is something that, I always had dreams of as a kid. We never had that conversation about that. But she's, lo and behold, she's like doing it. It's amazing.
Well, the goes to like the way that kids, and I'm not a father yet. I'm getting married, by the way, in 2 weeks. So that's super
Oh,
exciting. Yeah. But
congrats.
thank you. So, but it goes back to what I would think. My sister has a 3-year-old, and it's the kids are watching the parents, even taking note of them non-verbally. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, like here we're unraveling one of your most prized passions as a child, and now you're seeing your own child sort of play this out in front of her while you told me that you weren't sure how much conversation you've had with her about
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
What about nonverbal cues that she could have picked up on you, read from you, that got her to go down this route? Because there has to be a correlation.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure she's a bright kid, and she, I mean, kids are very intuitive. They pick up on a lot of things that you don't ever realize. And so absolutely, I think that is entirely something that happened that she must have picked up on it, somewhere. For me, either talking about these things with my wife, which is often that we uh, like to make jokes or repeat jokes that we've heard, or like stand up, you know, um, that sort of thing. But so yeah, it's entirely possible she just kind of picked up on those kind of cues, or just you know my I don't know. I guess yeah, I guess that's just the best way to put it. Is just both verbal and nonverbal cues of, maybe conversations, or just things that I've mentioned. I don't know.
This is as we wrap up this conversation, Matt. It's cool how like I my soon to be wife. So she's about to be a marriage and family therapist. And I
Mm,
guess because I'm listening to her and learning about all the stuff that she's doing, that now like I feel like I'm sitting in this chair, and part of me in this search for my guests, in a search of a self-discovery, that I kind of wear the therapist hat on in a way, or at least ask questions to where you get to talk about things from your past and my guests
mm,
past that they weren't always noticing how it influences their present life. So,
Mhm.
or the correlations we're talking about, or how what you did has actually sort of been bestowed upon your daughter. And I think that's a beautiful thing to come out of this
Yeah,
conversation. And I'm
yeah.
sure as we wrap up this conversation, Matt, I'm sure before we started, you knew for a fact that we were going to hit on those things.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I'm sure that if I really thought about it, yeah, uh, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm sure that it's it. You know, and it's interesting. Like today, today is my mom's birthday. We all got together with the family yesterday. It's a big milestone. I don't know if she's okay with me saying it, but it was her 75th birthday. So it was
Big birthday, yes.
yeah. So I guess that kind of brings back the whole familial part of this conversation too. But you know, I got a lot of good things from my parents in terms of uh, traits and empathy and kindness. And you know, I'm glad to even see that. Although I give my wife all the credit for it, but even my daughter, you know, I could tell on the path that she's on right now. Not only is she brilliant, but she also has that kindness and empathy, and probably even more so than I ever did. And it's just, you know, great to see something like that and to see someone that um, you know, basically is your own that you know is carrying on such a good and decent part of your life. And you know, it's just probably the most exciting thing that I have in my life is my family and my wife and I being able to watch this fantastic, you know, girl become a woman who's probably just gonna play through all of her life.
Well, it is this is a beautiful tribute to her and where she's going, and she better watch this, by the way. I'd be curious. You'd have to get back to me and tell me what her reaction is, because I'd be
Will
thrilled.
do.
And yeah, at the crux of this conversation, family comes first. And for you, it's cool to see how, as much as you set an example for your daughter, that you're learning a lot from her along the way. And I certainly have learned a lot from this conversation. Matt Keske, I'm Bryan Fenley. Matt, thanks so much for stepping in the chair and being a guest on this podcast.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you in a
Thank
few
you.
weeks.
Thanks.